And what is going on, everyone? And welcome to another special edition of Houston Texans Football and Bleacher Report. I am one part of your show, Ruben Calavillo. You can find me on YouTube, dropping daily Houston Texans content, 713 Houston Sportcast. My co host, Harley Dugan, Astros, Rockets, Texans at the lead underscore Houston. Speaking of the Rockets, baseball season is underway. Astros win the series at home 2-1 against the New York Mets. Harley, how you feeling about your Stros?
Feeling good, man. It's only game four, so it's tough to have an official full opinion of it. But the pitching looks absolutely legit. You only gave up 3 earned runs in 3 games against the New York Mets, who had a pretty solid lineup. So yeah, I'm pretty ecstatic about baseball season. I can't get enough of it right now.
You know what I can't get enough of is these damn Houston Texans. And once again, we are here talking about them making some moves. We want to shout out Bleacher Report allowing us to come on here. I always shout out to the man upstairs. Harley, over the weekend, a surprise, really.
Yeah.
But the Houston Texans signed free agent linebacker EJ Speed to a 1 year, $5 million deal. Now, EJ Speed is coming off of his best season stat wise, 143 combined tackles, 93 of them solo, 7 tackles for loss. He also got an INT and 5 pass breakups. There was a lot of discourse after this addition, Harley, but first, I wanted to get your thoughts on EJ Speed.
Yeah, for sure a shocker to me. Um, 1 year, 5 million for the Houston Texans. They ran ahead and continue to add to the defense. And immediate reaction was, man, this is a hell of a depth move for the Houston Texans. They're just getting deeper at the defensive side of the ball, and the Miko Ryans is, you know, creating his defense. Like, he is collecting players like infinity stones right now, and he is just trying to figure out what's the final piece. Now the final piece could be a defensive tackle at 25, but we'll get into that a little bit later. Definitely though, adding EJ Speed creates just another dynamic player that, if utilized correctly, which we know he will be here in Houston
Mhm.
with the Miko Ryans, being a former linebackers coach, defensive coordinator for the Niners, current DC head coach here. We know what he can do with a linebacker. And we know that EJ Speed has a great relationship with D'Amico Ryan. So, yeah, I like this move. I was a little shocked by the move, but overall, I think this is a very good move for the Houston Texans and their linebacker and their defense.
Yeah, when I saw this move, one of my first reactions was thinking, who's the odd man out? And I tweeted it I think it is Christian Harris, and I got a lot of, a lot of talk on there, but with EJ Speed,
Sure.
I think I think he definitely is your special teams guy with you not bringing back Neville Hewitt. Now, I will say before I tweeted that out, I did not check his age. Did you know he's 29 years old?
Yes, he is 29.
Entered the league at 24.
Yeah, he's only been in the league 5 years.
Really
And,
got it
and
going the past 2 seasons as a starter. But the reason why I said it was going to be a competition, Harley, is because you do not know whether or not Christian Harris is going to be healthy. And
Mhm.
right now, that is a big if. You didn't see him all last year. We were actually there at the training camp where it was the last time we saw him for the for the first part of the regular season. Ends up coming, I think, the final 4 games.
Yeah.
Plays against Miami. And then I don't think he played in the in the postseason against the Chiefs, correct?
Yeah, he did not against the Chiefs. Very much low. If he did, it must have been maybe a snap or two, but I don't think so. I think you're right there. No snaps for the Chiefs game, I would say. And then, I mean, from the Miami game and on, it was just not the same amount of snaps that you were hoping for with Christian Harris.
And that's why I came to the idea of, well, maybe the competition is there, at the third linebacker for this Houston Texans team because the first two are set. That
Mhm.
is Aziz Al-Shaair, your captain, and Henry To'oTo'o entering year three. His jump from year one to year two was absolutely insane. And I just think the health thing is the only aspect in where you know you are wanting to see in regards to Christian Harris. If healthy, there's no question. He might be your best linebacker, on the entire team. However, the last time we saw him really fully healthy was a couple of seasons ago in the playoffs against the Baltimore Ravens. With that being said, it's a 1 year deal. It's $5 million. It's low risk, high reward. I think you definitely for sure have your special teams guy going forward. And you brought it up. Whenever D'Amico Ryans gets his hands on a guy, they get better. Blake Cashman last season, 1 year into D'Amico, he goes and gets a big multi-year contract from the Minnesota Vikings. Neville Hewitt, when he stepped up, he played very well. Aziz Al-Shaair got better. We talked about Henry To'oTo'o. D'Amico Ryans, no matter where he goes, is going to develop linebackers. Over there with the San Francisco 49ers has Fred Warner. And,
Mhm.
Fred Warner says there is no me without D'Amico Ryans. And, as soon as um, EJ steps into the building, D'Amico Ryans is going to make him just a little bit better. So I'm excited to see where that plays out. But you add a linebacker, Hardy, to a already Super Bowl caliber defense. And why you also like the move is because Aziz Al-Shaair missed some time. Henry To'oTo'o missed some time. Christian Harris, like I mentioned, that's the only reason I'm bringing up the competition between him and EJ Speed at linebacker three. It's kind of like, okay, we also have EJ here in case anyone is missing some time.
Yeah, and when we add the context to it, because immediately I was like, well, um, okay, EJ Speed being signed here, to me, the immediate overreaction was going to be, oh, well, Christian Harris, your time is up, buddy.
Mm,
And I felt like that was a prisoner of the moment kind of thing. Like, I don't believe that. I'm still going to give the edge up for Christian Harris. Sure, they could be in a competition all they want, but at the end of the day, I'm still going to give the edge to Christian Harris regardless. Like, it would be a biased competition if I
mm-hmm,
would be the one creating this because as we all know, Christian Harris, yes, he had an injury that, he was out for the entire year with basically. I mean, I know he came back with the Dolphins game, but he just wasn't getting the same snaps that we're regularly seeing from him. And we all know what he can do. We saw 2 years
mm-hmm,
ago. I really believe, yeah, his coming out party was the second half of the season, but it started in the Colts game in the last game of the season where you had Colt fans going, man, who is this guy? Who is 48 for the Houston Texans? And then his coming out party was the Cleveland Browns game where he had himself a pick six against
mm-hmm.
old man Joe Flacco. And then he really started putting his name on the map when he was going, okay, now we're looking at a Christian Harris that just ran down Lamar Jackson, one of the
Mm-hmm.
fastest quarterbacks, if not the fastest quarterback in the NFL, the most shiftiest quarterback in the NFL, somebody that is extremely tough to tackle. Somebody Will Anderson himself said is the hardest quarterback to bring down. And Christian Harris brought him down with ease. So that guy is still there and somewhere in there, and all it is health.
Mm,
And like Blake Cashman, all it was for him to stay healthy, and obviously D'Amico Ryans helps with that too. And so Christian Harris to me still has the edge up on the competition aspect of the conversation. EJ Speed's cool and all. They could talk about, oh well, he has a Pro Bowl incentive, so he actually might get starter snaps. I just have an extremely tough time seeing him beat out either Christian Harris or Henry To'oTo'o. I think to me, he is confidently the linebacker four. You can see him in some sub package roles. And to me, he is a souped up version of Devin White.
mm.
Devin White didn't play special teams, though. EJ Speed could play special teams. EJ Speed would be really good blitzing wise. He's definitely very good against the run. But yeah, he does miss some tackles, and even though he had 143 of them, you kind of wonder because we know the Colts' run defense wasn't that good this year. Surprisingly, we're not used to that because Week 1 we went into there and Joe Mixon just sliced them up week
Gashed him for
one.
150.
Exactly. So we'll see. We'll see with the conversation around EJ Speed.
Mm. Some questions from the fans here. Texans Hog A, did we talk all about all the smack EJ Speed talked about last off season?
We're gonna
Yeah,
get
we're
there.
gonna get right into that. So I think it was CJ Stroud who started it, right? When him and Tank Dale were
Yes.
on the Philly podcast, and he brought up the phrase, why didn't you say something, when I was right there. Then on Zaire Franklin's podcast, which has EJ Speed on there, I wonder if they're going to continue to do it now with EJ Speed now being a Houston Texan. I would think not. But they talked about that game and talked about how excited they were for week 1 at Indianapolis this season and excited, to play the Houston Texans. And we all know how that ended up, them
Yep.
being swept by the Houston Texans. But I just think it's funny, Harley. You go one season talking crap, trying to lay out the person in front of you. Then the next season, your teammates and we heard EJ Speed say earlier, our goal is to get the ball back in CJ's hands.
Yeah, and I think it was quite funny actually when you really look at everything and you I think we just kind of blurred both things to be together. We blurred the competition aspect of this game into reality when at the end of the day this was always about just competition, and
Mm.
it's just that competitive level is just the mindset of being competitive. CJ Stroud said something way back in Sirius XM about how he cooked the Colts, even though the Colts beat us 2 years ago in the first game with Anthony Richardson. That's what came to the response of the In the Trenches podcast with EJ Speed and Zaire Franklin. Then you had him come back with a response with the Philly podcast. Then they had a response, and EJ Speed was on Kay Adams' show and
Mm.
had himself a little bit of a response saying that he had a bone to pick with CJ Stroud, and then also talked about the play where he actually did sack CJ Stroud and saying, hey, that's me, huh? But ultimately, they share the same agent, David Mulugeta, and, it's just competition at the end of the
Mm.
day, man. You know how many times we've played football and, you say something to one of your buddies, but hey, you don't really mean it. You know, you're not going to kill the dude. Like, but on that football field is a different kind of aspect, and tempers flare, competition rises, and CJ was talking his noise, and the Colts said, "Hey, man, we were right there with y'all, and for every reason, they're also right as well. We just had the last laugh at the end, getting into the playoffs and beating them at
Mm.
Lucas Oil Stadium, and or as I like to say, Nico Collins Stadium. But regardless,
Thought it was a
EJ Speed
Stroud
is now a
house.
Houston Texan. He has a relationship with D'Amico Ryans, and as he said, him and CJ Stroud, they're cool, man. They're fine. Ain't nothing wrong with it.
And as you expect two professionals, to be once they are on the same team. Another question for Mr. Magic Mike, 1989.
That man was living it up in the
Living
heyday.
it up. Would you guys like to see the Houston Texans sign free agent wide receiver Amari Cooper? If not, who would you like to see Houston sign or trade for in the wide receiver position? I am good on Amari Cooper. I'm good on these veteran wide receivers. I think, I had some hope about Stephon Diggs, but I was only hoping for like a 1 year deal. Nothing like what he got
No.
from the New England Patriots. As far as trading for a wide receiver, Harley, I know there was some chatter last week about a Chris Olave from the New Orleans Saints, and that does excite me because Chris Olave, he's a 1,000 yard guy. I think he could be 12. I think he could be 13. I think we haven't seen Chris Olave's best football, and that is just because of the quarterbacks that he's had to play with the Saints. I think this could be a potential opportunity for the Houston Texans. One of their last swing for the fences before we have to make CJ Stroud the highest paid quarterback in the NFL, and that is bringing in a wide receiver that who he was familiar with in college in Chris Olave.
Yeah, and I mean, when I look at the receivers, sure, Amari Cooper. I only say this as of right now, no. But let's say you probably are going to draft a wide receiver, and if you circle back to this conversation before the season starts, and Amari Cooper is still out there, or Tyler Lockett, who is also available, still out there. If the Houston Texans decided to sign Cooper or Lockett around that time, I wouldn't mind it. I wouldn't actually. Just because, yeah, you have a rookie wide receiver. It's a 1 year deal, though. You don't know if you're going to have Tank Dell at all this year, which we're assuming we're not.
Mm.
And to me, I'm like, hey, the more weapons, the better. And Amari Cooper can play the outside wide receiver position. We don't know what we're drafting at wide receiver. We're assuming we're taking a wide receiver. I would fairly assume they take one. But if they're still available around that time after the draft, before preseason, hey, I wouldn't mind here. Tyler Lockett
Mm.
is somebody that's very familiar with the system because he's played against it very much in his career. So who knows? Amari Cooper can still get it done at his age. He ain't the greatest like he was before, but if they wanted another veteran receiver out there, I wouldn't be mad about it. Now, trading for one, like immediately I thought of what you said, Chris Olave. I agree with you. I'd love Chris Olave. Unsure about the trade value. I know maybe a second and I think it was a second and a fifth that was
Mhm.
uh, you know, what was it fantasized up about from the Chat Sports Texans news or whatever it was called. And I mean, second and a fifth is pretty rich. And I like Chris Olave, but there is an injury history when it comes to him. He has a boatload of concussions that you have to take into account into his young career as well. And he's also on the last deal of his contract this year, so he's going to want to get paid. You just paid Nico Collins sure 2 years ago, or going into 2 years ago, and yeah, it's a relatively cheap contract. But you also have to pay others as well, as Will Anderson, as well as CJ Stroud, as well as even Jalen Petrie. And so that conversation is always there too. If Christian Harris balls out this year, he's going to have to get paid as well
Mm.
too. So, and whether or not they do that is going to be up for question, but that's a conversation for another time. So I like Chris Olave. I love the idea, but I feel like it's extremely unlikely to happen.
I think looking for a trade for a young wide receiver who is needed a deal. I would say it is more likely, the Houston Texans bring in a Amari Cooper or, as you mentioned, a Tyler Lockett. If I had to choose between the two, I would say Tyler Lockett because the Ram system asks for wide receiver.
Oh boy, there goes Ruben. Ruben was talking about the RAM system. Yeah, and I mean Tyler Lockett. There we go. He's back. He was talking about Tyler Lockett in the RAM system. That's where you dropped out at right there.
Xfinity, man, they're about to get it, they're about to get a call. But what I was saying, what the Rams ask of their wide receivers is good route runners, separators, someone who knows how to attack a defense, and that's what Tyler Lockett has done his whole career. We were on when we saw news that he was going to be released, and we immediately thought, oh, Las Vegas Raiders, Pete Carroll, Geno Smith hasn't seen any movement yet. Wonder if he still wants to play. What about Hunter Renfro? Hunter Renfro apparently Harley is coming out of. Yeah, I do need that AT&T Wi-Fi. Coming
Yes, same.
out of retirement, route runner, separator. What are your thoughts on that?
Um, that's a big risk for me when it comes to Hunter Renfro. It's hilarious to say that because man, Hunter Renfro, we were idolizing for him to reunite with a certain quarterback we had a while ago, and that never obviously
Oh,
happened.
we were.
But Man, that was a fun conversation back then. But I don't know, man. Tyler Lockett, Hunter Renfro. As of right now, he didn't play all of last year. He's trying to make his comeback. Like, I mean, if it's a 1 year deal, obviously it'll be a 1 year deal, but it's got to be super cheap. 1 year, 2 million. 1 year, 3 million. Um, you've worked. Nick Haley can work with two slot receivers. We've seen that before. But I'm not entirely sold, but it is a extremely low risk deal that if the Texans did it, I mean, he would basically be a camp body, and
Mm,
he's just getting an opportunity to not only showcase himself for the Texans, but as well as other 31 other teams that, hey, maybe I can still do it in this league.
mm. One last comment from Benji before we get into ourselves a little mock draft here. Before EJ was drafted, he only had a private workout for one team, and
Yeah.
that was the 49ers when D'Amico was there, if you didn't know. Well, shout out to you, Derlin Harris, for that info right there. Harley, pick 25 for the Houston Texans. We're on the Pro Football Sports Network mock draft simulator. And first of all, it's just funny that every year there's a different like number one go-to for mock draft. Last year it was PFF, and then the year before that I think it was Draft Central. So
Mhm.
excited to see whose it is next season. But at pick 25, here's who available. We talked about Josh Simmons, offensive tackle from the Ohio State, potentially a franchise left hand for you. Luther Burden the third, wide receiver from Missouri. You want to talk about electric. You want to talk about playmaker. That's what it is. Well, let me ask you about Luther Burden. There's been some stories coming out about how his character is a little flawed. I've heard the word diva being thrown around. Heard about him quitting during football games. Your thoughts on this PR slander campaign on Luther Burden? Doesn't look good.
It doesn't. Whoever's trying to push him down far enough for them to trade up or even select, they're doing a pretty good job of it, right? This is what they do around the NFL draft. They throw out a lot of rumors, news, and it's up to us to figure out whether or not this is real or not. And we don't have necessarily all the information in the world to figure out and debunk this rumor, but I mean, that's a bad look. I just off the rumor alone, that's what I'll base it off of. It's not a good look, not a good look at all. Excuse me. And Luther Burden. I mean, at the end of the day, I'm just like, eh. I have a head coach here in Houston
Mm-hmm.
where he is going to get the most out of you. He's going to get you to watch film and get you to be in the weight room and get you to be locked in to everything else that is going on. So, I mean, Luther Burden, sure, we could talk about those issues and the rumors and the news, but with teams that have a confident head coach that could get the most out of their players, like a Pittsburgh Steelers, Mike Tomlin, they wouldn't be afraid to take a Luther Burden. The Texans wouldn't be afraid to take a Luther Burden. I'll throw the Patriots in there with Mike Vrabel, very confident coach. He will get the most out of Luther Burden. Like, you got other coaches in the league that, are a little bit more laid back. And they're just going to be like, oh, yeah, man, you show up to practices 2 days this week, like, yeah, no, we got guys that I'm comfortable in, a locker room that's definitely tapped in and nothing crazy about it. We just had Stephon Diggs, this guy that was supposed to be a cancerous whirling dervish, and he comes into this locker room and he becomes an instant leader for the Houston Texans. Not saying Luther Burden will become an instant leader, but I'm not shy about those rumors. I wouldn't be afraid to take him if he was available at 25. I'm running to the podium.
Mm. So that's exactly where we went to now. What you're immediately going to deal with. You didn't take an offensive tackle. You didn't take Josh Simmons, who was there. It doesn't matter who you have out there catching the ball. If you cannot protect CJ Stroud, it doesn't matter. What would be your immediate, response to someone being upset that the Houston Texans passed on Josh Simmons for a Luther Burden?
Well, immediately I go, okay, well, he looked great in his pro day, by the way. He looked
Mm-hmm.
fantastic. only 5 months off his torn patellar tendon, but that injury causes some worries still for any NFL team. Maybe Josh Simmons takes a little bit of a dip, not too far though for 58. But he will take, I think he does take a little bit of a dip just because of that injury and the nature of that injury. We all know it has a history, and that history is, tearing down careers in the NFL. Now, he is super young still, and he is legitimately still one of the best tackles in this draft. I look at it like this: you still have three other picks in the top 100.
Mm.
You didn't hit yourself on an offensive lineman in the 25. You don't necessarily have to go ahead and reach for an O lineman. If the Houston Texans don't have them high on the board, then they can look elsewhere. They could look at getting a receiver. They could look at either trading down, or they could look at DT potentially. Who knows? But it wouldn't shock me if the Texans and D'Amico Ryan specifically wouldn't shock me if they went defense and got themselves a damn good defensive tackle at 25, someone like Walter Nolan. But there's a lot of guys there that I wouldn't mind at 25 if it is available.
So I went with Luther Burden, and at pick 58, who's here's who available to us: Travion Henderson, Caleb Johnson, Marcus Imbo, offensive tackle from
Mm,
Purdue, Jaden Higgins, wide receiver,
mm,
TJ Sanders, defensive tackle, Tate Ratledge,
mm.
guard out of Georgia. And I think that's where we might go.
Yeah.
Getting yourself a future right or left guard is huge for the Houston Texans. And hey, you get some offensive line help, and you could say Tate Ratledge has an opportunity to start week 1 at the right guard spot.
Yeah, I agree with you there. And ultimately, like, you could take Ratledge and you can go, well, you got a pretty good. That could potentially be your starting five: Cam Robinson at left tackle, Titus Howard at left guard, centers Drew Scruggs, right guards Tate Ratledge, and then your right tackle is Blake Fisher. That's a decent offensive lineman on paper. At least it sounds okay. It ain't the greatest, but you also got to hope that with the addition of Nick Caley and what he can do for the offense, can succumb to the deficiencies of that offensive line. That's what you're really hoping for.
What are your thoughts on Harold Fannin Jr.?
Oh, lots of dots. I love the ability he can block. He's lined up at fullback as well for Bowling Green, and he's a very good blocker, and that's something that you love to see. But Harold Fannin can also be a damn good receiver as well. So you got yourself a little bit of a tweener, and somebody Nick Caley is gonna fall in love with if looking at the film with him. Um, Only thing is he comes from Bowling Green, and you know how it is. The Houston Texans, they just don't really draft guys that are not in the FBS. I don't know if Bowling Green is in the FBS or not. I think they are. I could be wrong though. I think they're maybe in the MAC or something like that. But it does make me wonder, because of the not the highly acclaimed school, will the Houston Texans still grab this guy? And that's just a side point, but I don't mind Harold Fannin Jr. I think he'd be really good in a Texans uniform. Did not hear you.
Oh, would a Shamar Turner excite you at pick 79?
Definitely, he's got that. I mean, he's a nasty player, right? He has the history of penalties from the Texas A&M, and I mean, there's guys that call him a hothead and everything, but get him here with the right coach at D'Amico Ryans, and I'll turn a hothead into a swarmy individual that's wanting to rip your head off. You never have enough good players like that.
And then I'll go ahead and take Gunnar on the selection in the third round. Be a tight end, some plays has made big moments for in general. We're getting closer and closer to the Houston Texans. Added a addition to defense free agent linebacker Houston Texans kind of followers. For more, and you guys all have a very blessed day. Boom.
I can barely hear you.
Hold up.